From Middle Market Media, this is CFO Thought Leader, where we speak to finance leaders about driving change within their organizations. This is episode 392.
No, actually, although I was with Shell, I did find that I was in too large an environment and I didn't feel comfortable. I felt lost. Whereas when I moved to Harris, they break up into divisions and sub-business units. So sub-business unit as such was around $50 million revenue. And actually that was a perfect size from my viewpoint of being really able to get into the business, all aspects of the business. It actually gave me that ability to really get right across the organization and understand all the touch points.
From Middle Market Media, this is CFO Thought Leader, where we speak to finance leaders about driving change within their organizations. Hi, it's Jack Sweeney. On today's show, we speak to Christopher Baker, CFO of Goodwill, Silicon Valley. We all know there are multiple paths to the CFO office, but no matter what path one takes, future finance leaders must be on the lookout for strategy experience. But where to find it? Chris Baker explains why smaller units and departments where finance executives can be more hands-on and work beside other functional groups is very often the optimal path. Our discussion begins after these words from our sponsor. Just as a house needs a good foundation, your business needs a solid technology foundation. At Workday, a different approach to finance technology is giving growing mid-size organizations a distinct advantage. Workday's flexible architecture means that when business conditions change, finance can easily make changes to business processes. To learn more about how a finance system from Workday supports mid-size organizations from the ground up, visit us at workday.com. Workday, built for the future. Hello, we're speaking to Christopher Baker, CFO of Goodwill of Silicon Valley. Chris, welcome.
Good to be here, Jack.
And Chris, I have to say it's been a while since we had a not-for-profit CFO on the podcast, so we've been looking forward to this one. And we want to begin where we always do, which is ask our CFO guests to look back and identify those experiences they feel best prepared them for a CFO role. What comes to mind?
Absolutely. There's many experiences through the years, especially as I'm more at the latter part of my career, but I always remember I left college, I was moved to London, and I worked for Shell Oil Company, which was, as you know, a very large company in the centre of London there. Over 5,000 individuals in the organisation in London, but I remember working there, and it had a tremendous sports complex. It had everything to bring along the employee and really make their experience a good experience. The one thing that really struck me, that the reason I left there, I remember looking at an opportunity to reduce costs, which I had brought up to my manager at that time, and I said we ought to be thinking of this, and that. And his response to that is, that's not your job. Your job is to fill in those numbers and not to think that way, or that's our job. So immediately, I actually walked out of Shell Oil Company that day and never walked back.
Really?
So that was the way I am. I like to try and make a difference. I actually did start my own company at that point in time. I used to sell used products and had a cycle of selling that, which is very similar to the Goodwill model today. So that actually gave me a lot of strengths, I believe. It really made myself accountable to myself, having that ownership, and really developed a further drive within me to be successful. Once I left that, I came back, I started a family, and we decided, hey, it's more beneficial to the family that I had a steady job. So I moved in to an American corporation. At that time, I moved to Cambridge, and I worked again. It was a case in point. I started off as a financial accountant, and within 5 years, I was the finance director, and within 10 years, I'd actually moved on and also was in charge of most of operations. It was a very interesting time. It was a very challenging environment. It was very much a hire and fire environment. But again, I think it was that ownership and that accountability and the ability to speak my mind that helped me and kept me in good stead within the different culture, that American UK culture, which is very different.
And I want to mention, if it's okay, that American corporation was the Harris Corporation. And can you tell us something of the work you were doing at that time? What was sort of the heavy lifting?
I remember some of the challenges I did have. We worked across Europe. I remember one specifically where we'd acquired a company in France, and it was a very strong individual leader of that company who sold it to Harris Corporation, but was very reluctant to let go of the reins and to bring on board, or let us bring on board, the Harris corporate structure. I remember being out there and being in the hotel for breakfast and thinking, how am I going to be able to change this hostile environment, and being very nervous about it at the time. But it's interesting. It really is a case in point is to being able to speak to the individual, the CEO at the time, and really understand what was his key drivers. His key drivers was his business, the development of the business. It was technology, so it was the development of the product. And one of the key things he wanted was a development budget. He didn't have much of a development budget. And as we talked more and more, it came, it opened up the conversation, and it made me realize that the majority of their development budget was being utilized in product support of existing products in the field, which is separate from development. And, by separating that out, I then gave him an ability to have a totally separate development budget that was what he really wanted and to drive the business. It also supported Harris from the viewpoint of, now we could separate out the product support costs, so we could see how efficient and what the deficiencies were within the existing product line. So it's a win-win. In addition, and the third line of that was the ability to then, by having a clearly defined development bucket there, we managed to then leverage that with the local area grants, to be able to get a development grant from, I believe it was in Rennes in Brittany, that we could actually then invest into the business. So actually they helped us pay for that development. So it's a win-win-win situation. And then I did get the respect, not so much the respect, but at least I got the CEO there to realize that we weren't just there to pull all the assets out of his business and strip it. We were there to support him as well. So that was a important thing, but it was really understanding what his key drivers were, and that was critical, and one of those learning moments. I remember, really thinking, wow, I think I'm really pleased that we managed to achieve that.
But what was the opportunity then that brought you to the States?
Interesting you should ask that, Jack. Yeah, that was a case in point. Actually, it was a couple of learning experiences there. One was I actually, at that time, my relationship, I'd separated from my wife, and I had the opportunity at Harris of they acquired a company in Silicon Valley doing software automation, and had two branches, one in France, one in the UK, and I did the due diligence. And then this was back in 2000, and they actually had no one over here. Everyone was leaving, so they needed someone to come over to the States to steady the ship for a couple of weeks. I volunteered to come over to Silicon Valley, and I came in and again used that same technique, really trying to understand the organization, understand the individuals that are still left within the organization to take us forward, and developed a rapport, and they asked me to stay on. Obviously, it was a very stressful time, but Harris were really good about that. They provided me, my family, to come over a couple of times a year, and I also was still responsible, had the directorship of the French operation. So I was going over to Europe once a quarter. So it managed to ease me into the U.S. and into Harris Corporation over.
Was that like post-merger integration work, or how would you characterize it? Yeah.
It was post-merger. I walked in post-merger, but it was a case in point. They acquired a company, and really they acquired a bit of a lemon as such. It was the technology and the way the software was written was such that it wasn't sustainable for the long term. So we really had to step in, break it down, go through and understand the strengths of the business and develop a lot more support side to make certain that we could stay profitable. So it's a challenging from that respect.
And at the same time, you've entered the world of Silicon Valley, where I would think in some way the mindset was different.
Yeah, it's a very different, and that excited me. The level, the intensity. I mean, I remember my software engineers used to come in, walk in about 10:30 in the morning, 11 o'clock. I think, well, why are they walking in so late? But you could see at night, 11 o'clock at night, you'll still see the cars in the car park, and their commitment and enthusiasm for developing a new next level technology was stunning.
I mean, did you desire to work in a smaller enterprise, or that wasn't really the criteria you would use to go forward?
No, actually, although I was with Shell, I did find that I was in too large an environment and I didn't feel comfortable. I felt lost. Whereas when I moved to Harris, they break up into divisions and sub-business units. So sub-business unit and such was around $50 million revenue. And actually that was a perfect size from my viewpoint of being really able to get into the business, all aspects of the business. I actually, as I mentioned, I took over everything from order to customer service. So it actually gave me that ability to really get right across the organization and understand all the touch points, because it's not the case in point of in finance just getting the results and saying, hey, we missed revenue by this, or our expenses were there. It's really understanding what's driving that revenue, what's driving that expense, what's driving that inefficiency right at the front touch point. So it's all those different touch points across the organization.
So let's segue to Goodwill Silicon Valley. How do you, what happens next? Do you leave Harris Corp, or what transpires?
Well, really, I'd left Harris Corporation. They'd moved the head office. They decided to buy a much larger software automation company to swallow up the one they bought in Silicon Valley and cover the Goodwill, as it were. And I went into consulting, and I was working across in various companies in the Valley consulting. And a friend of my wife's was the new CEO of Goodwill, and asked me to come and do some pro bono to get them up and running into Great Plains software system, which I did. And then later that year, they were trying to hire someone, and they brought someone in who lasted 2 weeks and realized that it was too complex for them. And Mike was on my doorstep and asked if I could come in and assist them get through the year end and just get straight. And I walked into Goodwill, and it was, I actually did have another very good opportunity at that time to go off to consulting, which I expected to do. But once I walked into Goodwill, I saw the potential of the organization, and I saw the mission, and the fact that what we're trying to do is maximize the return on the business so that we can reinvest in the mission and make an impact on individuals' lives, people with barriers to employment, get them back into the workplace. It was just too compelling to me. And also I saw the whole work, I really recognized within the workforce, everyone I spoke to, that thirst for knowledge, that thirst for being able to take it from a thrift mentality to a business mentality and really wanting to succeed and really bought into the mission. So it was a no-brainer for me. Once I was here, I was hooked.
So how is Goodwill structured organizationally, and how do the geographies all come together?
So really, it's a case. Goodwill International has the brand name, and that's based out of Washington. But basically, they give the rights to counties, certain areas. So we have the rights to Santa Clara and San Benito counties to utilize the Goodwill name, and we're part of a family. So we pay dues based on our revenues, and we get back from that the use of the Goodwill name, collaboration within Goodwill, training from Goodwill, and also the logos. Yeah.
So what would be the sort of weight class of Goodwill Silicon Valley if we were to look at the Goodwill ecosystem?
Yeah, well, we're probably a medium-sized Goodwill, and I should have mentioned before, each Goodwill is its own 501c3 with its own board of directors. I mean, that's a plus and a minus, which we can talk about later. But basically, we have 19 stores, and we also have an as-is store which sells the product that we don't sell in the stores separately within an auction environment. So we have 19 stores in total. Overall, we have $50 million in revenue. In addition to the retail stores, we also have social enterprises. We had car detailing, mattress recycling, contract manufacturing, kitting and packaging, and also our recycle operations, which is where really people, planet, profit is, with the 3 Ps, is really key to Goodwill.
It's interesting. You use the phrase social enterprise, which, of course, is quite the buzz phrase these days. But in some ways, I think Goodwill was the original social enterprise, perhaps. Is that a stretch?
It really is. I mean, when we say social, we bring individuals, whether they veterans or incarcerated individuals, and we bring them into the social enterprises. We train them. We not only employ them, we provide them training, we provide them a mentorship through that, and we provide placement out into the outside world so they can get a job that's sustainable for them and their families. And we also monitor them, not just getting the placements, but the retention within that placement as well, because that's critical to the success.
Now, Goodwill is probably not what people think of when they think of businesses that are leveraging new technologies. But Chris, I know you have been very much involved in the adoption of new technologies in finance and how Goodwill are using those technologies for their business model innovation. So maybe you can just share with us your mindset and some of what you're up to when it comes to leveraging technologies.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, one of the things I came on board here was to really take Goodwill from the thrift age into cutting edge Silicon Valley technology. I remember a board member saying to me, "Hey, we're in Silicon Valley, we should be at the cutting edge." And as such, I developed a 5-year strategic plan. I mean, what's critical here is, again, to be successful in an organization, you need to break down silos. You need to be really able to collaborate. And one of the first things I made certain I did was I changed our platform more to the large Google platform. It wasn't just reliant on the Microsoft and everyone having their own files in their own folder. So it's sharing of data was very critical to me. So being able to go to the cloud, having it on the web there so that they can go into a drive and they share the information. And it's one source of information. We don't have 5 different files. That's really critical. also then making certain that I have an ERP and a point-of-sale system that integrates together and provides me real-time information. Then pulling that information into business intelligence, getting away from that spreadsheet mentality, as I mentioned before, and creating the amount of time we spent creating spreadsheets, the amount of time we spent doing all these things. We're so far behind the curve on providing the information to make an impact, plus the fact that we're not really looking at the data, spending enough time looking at the data. We're spending all that time creating the data. So developing, pulling in, we went through about 3 different business intelligence tools before we ended up on the one we're at now, where we pull in data, we pull in data sets, and it's really critical that, don't look at a business, how much does that cost? What is truly the benefit of that business intelligence? How easy it is to use? How can it create really good reports so that can really make an impact on the organization and that can be easily understood by management across the organization? So we actually pull together all our various data, whether it be payroll, sales, whatever. So we pull it together and provide key, meaningful data that can be drilled in by day, by month, by time, by store, by location, by hour even, and one of the critical measures we measure is our labor cost. One of the critical is our earned rate per hour right across our organization. One of the things we've developed recently is that the other thing is we actually track every item that we put on the floor. So we know in the organization who produced that item. And that's critical. Now we have a method that we actually incentivize our sorters based on the revenue that's sold from the products they put on the floor, not the production. Before we used to incentivize by production, which was wrong, because what we found was that anyone can put a lot of product on the floor. If it didn't sell, it wasn't beneficial to the organization, yet we were giving a productivity bonus to this person. Now we actually measure them by the actual revenue they generate on behalf of the organization. Going forward, we're looking further to utilize predictive analytics to really take the data into these algorithms and then see if there's trends and patterns so we can maximize our pricing. And the other thing from that is that, as we all know, we can only have X number of key reports or measures for managers to really manage to, otherwise it gets too much and too evolved. But at the same time, where we really want to take it is to have some exception reports. So in other words, if there's anything that goes out of alignment on specific, whether it's the number of items put out, shoes, or the price points, that we can send out an exception report to the district managers so they can address anything ahead of time rather than behind the time. So it's really taking some of these leveraging the technology to take us to the cutting edge of, where we are. And as you know, we're not just retail, we are e-commerce. And I'm talking not just retail, I'm talking e-commerce, I'm talking all of our businesses that we're looking at it in this respect.
Help me understand, what is the e-commerce part of your model then? What are you selling? What are the transactions happening there?
So really what we do is we do take, we see anything in the stores as we sort through that we believe is a collectible or an item with certain brand names, we actually then send through to e-commerce. It's a case in point of, obviously you've got a limited audience at your store, especially for collectibles, and, to be able to maximize the value of those items, you sell it on e-commerce, you've got World Wide Web, basically. I mean, it's obviously most of our sales are within the US, but we do sell across the globe. And if it's a collectible, then you've got those people that collect those specific items will be bidding up that item to what is the true value of that item rather than, really, I think, in a way, we were creating social enterprises within our stores and still are to a certain extent of our customers coming in, buying the goods that we're selling, and then making a lot of profit on that. We're actually taking some of that away so we can actually gain that profit so that we can then reinvest back into the mission and our different programs.
So what's the competitive landscape like? Who are your competitors?
I mean, that's a very good question because personally, I look. You could say obviously you got Salvation Army, you've got Hope. I don't see those as competitors. They are competitors, but they're not because we're here to make an impact on the community. I want them to do well. I want us to do well. Who I see the competitors are the for-profit organizations such as Savers that say, hey, X amount go to non-profit, but that percentage is so small, most of that goes to the shareholders. That's who I see are key competitors. Those are the ones I'd like to put out of business. I would love to see all donations come in, be maximized, and go, and that profit go back into a mission, whether it be Goodwill or Hope or Salvation Army.
And so one of our favorite questions, what are the key metrics then that you're paying close attention to?
I mean, obviously, we measure, look every day. I can look at my sales broken down by donation or new products. Also, production drives sales, so that's critical. We look at our labor rates, as I mentioned before, making certain my earned rate per hour. That's critical. That's more of what I call a lag measure. When I say lead and lag measures, I can see today what my production is. I can see what my sales are. A lag measure is something that takes time to be able to see, but it's still just as important. Another one is critical to us is our turnover. Now, we expect high turnover. For example, last year, our turnover was around 120%. That makes it very difficult to run a business profitably when you have that level of turnover. So again, it really made us step back and say, who are our core positions that really drive the organization that we do not want high turnover? And then we're saying in these other areas, we expect higher turnover. So again, it's making certain that we've got the right benefits and the right pay to keep those core positions, because those core positions will drive our business to the next level. Those core positions will train our mission employees that come into the organization so that they're successful when they move on outside of the organization to the business world. So that's a critical measure as well.
What does your finance team look like today? I mean, does it have the similar mix of skills of a traditional finance team?
It probably does, and I'd really like to spend a bit of time on that because when I came on board, it was very dysfunctional. I had to restate the prior 3 years' accounts. That being said, the board said to me, you'll probably have to replace most of your finance team. 9 years later, most of that finance team, 95% of them are still here. We really spent time on mentoring. Their thirst for knowledge was excellent. Reorganizing it. One of the key things is really, as I mentioned, breaking down silos, making certain everyone understands the importance of what everyone else does and how each person affects each other. So I made it so that they had to develop their procedures, develop the workflow, their procedures, and then each individual had to stand up in front of the team and go through that. And we all talked through where the control points are, where the value added is, where it's not value added. So we developed much more of a team type approach and a lot more knowledge sharing. So that was really critical. I mean, it was critical from team bonding as well as knowledge and making certain we had processes. So if someone did leave, we've always got procedures and processes that someone can step into. At the same time, so I've taken the team now up a level, then I've challenged them even more because I believe in not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. In other words, internships. I'm very strong on internships. And we actually have internships in IT and finance where I bring in individuals with disabilities, individuals on the autism spectrum who've got a lot of diversity and a lot to bring to the workforce, and I bring those into the organization into certain roles, and we mentor those individuals within the department as well. And that's probably very different from most organizations, but it works well. It builds that bonding within the department. We think of ourselves as the Goodwill family here, and that's just so critical that people come in, they feel respected, and people got a smile on their face, and they feel this is home from home. We spend a lot of time from work, at work, and we really need to make certain people enjoy that and are respected for what they do.
Chris, I think you might have already shared a few aha moments with us, but we always like to ask for a finance strategic moment, an aha moment. Have we touched on that one already, or what? Do you have something else you'd like to share?
Well, I think I have touched on it slightly. The one that really comes to mind is, as I mentioned to you earlier, was the fact that we changed our production and our production bonus, and it's now based on earned rate per hour. So we really sort of took away, hey, that's a production, that's a metric. Hey, this is your sales, that's a metric. Here's your sell-through, that's a metric. And we then, and this is your sell price, that's a separate metric. Basically, by tracking that individual, the items they put on the floor, down to the revenue that generated, that really takes all those metrics and puts it into one. And that really sort of drives the business, and then that sort of focuses them more. And the other one I'd like to mention is what I really enjoy is that we do have a management training program, an internal one here. And the fact being involved in that, spending a couple of sessions with the managers and really providing training for them, which is, understanding who the participants are and then being able to have that training on finance and being able to ask them questions or show them how what they do impacts the bottom line, or elements of the retail store or the salvage operations, recycle operations, how much of an impact that can have by not ordering product to put on the floor, or the fact that we're not sorting the product correctly. But really being able to see all those light bulbs go off when you're providing this management training and asking them questions and showing them real life examples and seeing the light bulbs go off of these managers and seeing that can really make an impact from them, and in the organization.
Thought Leader listeners, don't go anywhere. We're about to enter the mentoring round with Chris Baker, CFO of Goodwill, Silicon Valley, after these words from our sponsor. You want smart, clear, and honest guidance to help you meet the financial goals of your middle market business. With U.S. Bank, you have a partner who will help you find the right solutions to help your organization reduce payment costs, enhance control, improve cash flow, and expand your spend visibility. U.S. Bank's dedication to making ethical decisions and doing the right thing is at the heart of what they do, and their efforts haven't gone unnoticed. They've been named a 2017 World's Most Ethical Company for the third consecutive year by the Ethisphere Institute. To learn more, visit uspayment.com/middlemarket. Okay, we're going to jump to our mentoring round where I get to ask you several quick questions intended to inspire and mentor your finance leader peers and future finance leaders. What's one thing that's exciting you about finance and business today?
I think what's so exciting now is the technology that's coming along. We mentioned that earlier about business intelligence, and the ability now to really have this information up front, this business intelligence, that we can spend more time now looking at the results and then mentoring management across the organization. Where finance is going from a viewpoint of providing a P&L and doing the taxes, etc., to really being able to mentor management on finance and the impacts of what they're doing and how they can improve. So I think that's an exciting change as we move forward, really critical to me.
What do you wish someone had told you at the start of your CFO career? In other words, when you first stepped into that office, what is it that you wish someone had told you?
I'll be honest with you. If I look back at it over the years, and I'm certain many individuals listening now would say, you get so involved in the organization and that work-life balance, the fact that you don't need to do it all yourself. It's more important that you have work-life balance. You don't work 24/7, and you also use your experience and knowledge to pass down through the organization rather than to do it all yourself. So in other words, through the years, I realized when I look back, and with some regrets, I look back and say, hey, you know what? I got too involved. I should have handed down. I shouldn't have worked those type of I should have stepped back. It would have been better for me to have done that. I mean, those are the things. I think it's really having that balance through your life and make certain that you always ask yourself the question. Say every 6 months you step back and say, hey, what am I doing? What value am I adding? How's my team doing? Am I doing items that my team should be doing? So those are the critical things, I'd say.
Is there a personal habit that you believe has contributed to your professional success?
The ability to listen. I mean, really, it's a case in point. Understanding that, whether it's your employees, whether it's your peers, or whether it's even your business partners, your vendors, that all of them want to be successful. All of them 99% of people want to do the best they can, and really, when things aren't going so well, is to really understand where they're coming from so you can understand where the issues, and not use it as a tool to beat that individual up. It's as a tool to help them and to really mentor them, say, well, if you're doing that, what if we did it this way? How would that work? So it's more really, I want that person to succeed. I want my employees to succeed, and I want us to succeed. And I want as I say, I had a vendor on the phone the other day where we're developing a software. I said, if you're successful, I'm successful. I want you to be successful, and we can't have any hidden agendas here. We really need to be honest with each other. And that ability to, talk frankly with individuals and listen to their point of view.
Chris, I almost forgot to ask you whether you have a book you'd like to recommend. Do you have a book? Is that a good question?
No, I'd like you to ask that question because my passion, as you know, I'm here. I work for Goodwill. We assist people with barriers to employment, and one of the key areas here is and the book I really like is The Power of Different. It's by I believe it's James Schultz, and it's a book that really looks at individuals with neurodiversity and what they can bring into the workforce. And it's breaking down these barriers that we have. One individual in 68 now is on the spectrum, yet the workforce has employs a very, very small percentage of that. And we've got to recognize that society needs to change and recognize where society's going. We've got to get involvement and bring in embrace people that think differently. That takes us to the next level. It really enhances the business. It doesn't take away from the business. If you have people who all think the same way, you're never going to take that business forward. So it's good to have that ability to take on people who think differently.
Okay, our final question. Over the next 12 months, what are your priorities as a finance leader? Really, as
I mentioned, we just implemented last year new ERP systems. We're implementing predictive analytics, and we're going through that now. So it's really optimization of software, and to the extent that I can say, hey, I feel we have a really steady platform, and that I could then leverage that platform for other Goodwills and other organizations. I've already spoken to my vendor that I could just create an instance rather than have them having to recreate the will. I can create an instance for them. As I move forward, we have a lot of challenges in this industry, especially with minimum wage in Silicon Valley, and I fully support it. I mean, I don't know how anyone supports themselves on minimum wage in the Valley, but at the same time, those cost constraints are huge within our organizations. So I can see a lot of consolidation coming down the line, and I really want to be ready for that consolidation. So we have scalability, and we have processes that we can seamlessly bring on board other organizations so we can carry on and make a big impact on the mission, as I mentioned before.
Chris Baker, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you, Jack.
Hi, it's Jack Sweeney. CFO Thought Leader is pleased to welcome Workday as a 2018 sponsor partner. Together, we'll be collaborating on a number of live webinars featuring our CFO Thought Leaders. So don't forget, visit CFOThoughtLeader.com where you'll find information on upcoming events. Join us as our CFO Thought Leaders answer your questions in real time. Also, a special invitation for your human capital team members. The publishers of CFO Thought Leader, in collaboration with Workday and U.S. Bank, present the 2018 season of Workplace Champions, the podcast for talent-minded business leaders. Subscribe to Workplace Champions now on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. CFO Thought Leader and Workplace Champions are produced by Middle Market Media.